Good morning, friends. Back to the class. Yesterday, we looked into clauses, and let's begin the class today with a little recapitulation of what we did yesterday. Okay, the very first thing, we tried to understand what clauses are. Two criteria that define what clauses are. The first one, it's a larger part of a sentence. And two, it has a subject and predicate of its own. Right? So that we defined as clause. Okay? And we said that it fits in somewhere in between a sentence and a phrase. Okay? So having done with the concept of what clause is, we want to check out what is the other part of that, right? And the other part of that is the three types of sentences that we learned yesterday. Okay, what are those? Based on the clause. One is simple sentence. The second one is compound sentence. And the last one, the third one, the complex sentence. Okay. And we also try to define what simple, compound, and complex sentences are. And to remind you, a simple sentence has one clause, right? When it is one clause, it should definitely be a main clause. So naturally, when there is only one clause, we do not have any conjunctions over there. Now, second, what if there are two main clauses in a sentence, right? So two or more than two main clauses in a sentence. Then we call it a compound sentence. Okay, two main clauses. Definitely when we have two main clauses, there must be to join these two clauses. Okay, now next, the complex one. Okay, here also we have more than two or more than two clauses. But the difference here is one might be a main clause, and if there is one or more than one subordinate clause, then we call it a simple sentence. A complex sentence. Check it out again. A complex sentence consists of one main clause and more than one subordinate clause. So these definitions define what a simple, compound, and a complex sentence is. Now next, we checked out with simple, compound, and complex based on the structure of the sentence. So the structural analysis of the sentence helps us to identify whether the given sentence has a main clause, more than two main clauses, or a main clause with more than one subordinate clause. And based on this, we say that it could be a simple sentence, or it could be a compound sentence, or it could be a complex sentence, right? Okay. Now, next criteria that we had yesterday, define what this clause is. We also said that a finite verb is a must. Okay, so a finite verb is a must because every finite verb defines one clause, right? Or makes one clause. So let's just have a look at what those finite verbs are. And when we check with the finite verbs, we also have to see the counterpart of that. The counterpart are the non-finites. Okay, so let's go to the verbs now for today. Verbs. Okay, and we looked into it yesterday where we said one is finite and the other one is non-finite. That way, there are a couple more types of verbs. For now, from the clause point of view, we'll see finite and non-finite. And how did we define them? A finite verb is one that defines the number and tense. Okay. So today we will have detailed look into the verbs, that's finite and non-finite verbs. Obviously, if we look at non-finite verbs, they neither mention the number nor the tense. These non-finites all depend upon the finite verbs to get the number and tense. Okay, so let's put it this way. It neither gives the number nor tense. That's why they are non-finite. Okay, so let's try and see which verbs are non-finite. For that, let's go to an example. Okay, I'm engaging your class. Okay, so let's check out the tense of this sentence. So when we go to check out with the tense, obviously we need to check with the verbs. So we have the verbs here. I'm engaging. Okay, so what are the verbs now? The tense of this. And yesterday also we used the same. A nice reminder for you, right? Am is an equivalent of is, and so it is singular. So this is defining the number of the subject, right? That it is singular. Okay, so one criteria is fulfilled, that it's telling the number. Next one is the tense, right? Am, the equivalent of is, we consider it to be in present tense, right? So we got the number as well as the tense. So am is done. Now let's look at engaging. Okay, engaging is also a verb, right? So what is that? A main verb and a helping verb. So what is it now? This ing should remind you that it's a continuous tense. Any verb that ends with ing is a continuous tense. So the given tense of this sentence is present continuous. Okay. Now if we just consider that am is not there, I engaging your class. Okay, so that English doesn't go good, right? So those who have that sense of language, just the moment this kind of a sentence falls on your ear, you start feeling something jittery, that there's something wrong there. Okay, so this verb engaging cannot sustain with the number and the tense without am. So if it is not there, I engage in your class, I would be saying that it's continuous tense, right? Now only continuous tense can be identifiable, but whether it is present or past or future, don't know, right? So engaging depends on this verb to get its complete meaning, the complete action, because verbs are action words. Okay, so present continuous. So you get one example of a verb here with ing, which doesn't define the tense. Okay, so let's go for another example. Okay, what is another example? Let's go with this sentence. I'll come on this side to have the sentence for you. Okay, let's say I have done, or to make it easier, I would say I have seen. Okay, I have seen you. Yes. Okay, I have done my work yesterday. So I'll have this one here. I've done my work yesterday itself, and the other one is I have seen you yesterday. So why I have taken these verbs? Just to make you easier to follow it, right? So one here is done and the next one is seen. So let me just take the first example and analyze it for you. So I have done my work yesterday. Now let's find out the tense of this sentence. So which are the verbs that we have here now? The verbs are have done. Okay. So have as the helping verb and done as the main verb. Okay. Now let's check with the tense. Okay. Have is a present perfect tense verb. Right? So we have already got the tense with this sentence, with this verb itself. I have done. So what is done then? Done is the third part of the verb, that is a participle, right? For example, what is it? Three forms of the verb. The first one, let's take orders. Okay. The second form of the verb would be did, and the third form of the verb would be done. Right. So in grammar, we represent these verbs as V1, V2, and V3. Okay. Now look at the tenses. What is the tense now? Right. V1. The tense here is do or does, which means it is present tense. Okay. Second one, did. Quite simple to follow it. It's past tense. And done, it's past participle. Okay. So you get another point to remember here, that the verbs have these three forms based on their tenses: V1, V2, and V3. V1 and V2 represent present and past tense. V3 represents past participle of the verb, which are used with perfect tense. Okay, either it be present perfect or it be past perfect. We use participles. Okay, past participles with perfect tense. So have here is a present perfect. So what is being used here? Done. Now if I leave out have, I done my work, naturally doesn't fit in any kind of proper English, right? But even then, I done my work, done is V3. Now V3 will not have a tense of its own. So what it has to do, it will have to depend on have, and so have becomes a finite verb and done becomes a non-finite verb. Okay, so I have done my work. I've taken a similar example a little earlier, which was wiped out. I'll repeat that example for you. I have seen you. I have seen you yesterday. I'll keep the sentence short without mentioning the place where I saw you. So let's just go with this. I have seen you. Now, if I look at the verbs here are have and seen. Have as the helping verb and seen as the main verb. Okay. Now again, have is a perfect tense, which we have just looked into in the earlier example. So no need to repeat the reasons again. So have is a perfect tense verb and seen is the third form of see, right? If I keep writing, okay, this side is like the first form of the verb here is see. The second form of it is saw, and the third form of the verb is seen, right? So seen is the third form of the verb, which we said that it is a past participle verb. So when it is a past participle verb, it doesn't carry a tense and number of its own. For example, he has seen you yesterday. So if I take it as he has is defining the subject, right? Even with person, first person, second person, third person, even that also gets defined by the verb that we use next. Okay, seen doesn't define. So seen will be seen whether the subject here is he or I, right? So that tells you that this perfect tense is again a finite verb. Okay, it's a finite verb and seen becomes a non-finite verb. Let's have another sentence now. The next sentence, we can take it this one. I went to watch the match. I went to watch the match at the stadium. Of course, now it's pandemic time, so there's nothing that is happening there, but a lot is happening about whether we should have IPL or not. Okay, so with that in the context, I went to watch the match at the stadium. Now look at the verbs that we have got now. Okay, one is went and the other one is watch. Now, which tense should we be taking? Right? Went is past tense and watch is present tense. Now, in such a case, which tense do we take? Okay, going by the location of the verb, we need to take that immediate verb which follows the subject. Okay, and why not this? We cannot take this because to here, the to that is used here will neutralize the number and the tense of watch. Okay, how does it happen? For example, if I substitute the subject with they, right? They went to make any difference. Okay, so watch will remain the same, whether it is they went to watch the match, he went to watch the match, right? So watch will remain as it is. Why? Because to neutralizes the tense and the number that it can help us to identify. So this cannot be taken as the verb to identify the tense of this sentence. This to preceding the verb verb watch will neutralize it, and so we say went. Now the sentence is in past tense. Okay, so this verb is helping us to identify the tense of the sentence. So when this verb is helping us to identify the tense of the sentence, naturally we call it as a finite verb. In this example, of course, we have used the same verbs here. So together, have is a finite verb in these examples. Okay, and if I go to the earlier example, it's am which becomes the finite verb. Okay, so which are the non-finites used in these examples now? Engaging is one non-finite. Done is a second finite. Seen also comes in the same category. And to watch. So we have three different non-finites now. Right? Engaging and to watch. So how do we remember them now? We must remember them because it's easy for us to remember just three verbs which are non-finites. So why this is necessary is because if we can remember these three verbs which are non-finites, that becomes easy for us to say that other than these three verbs, all verbs are finite verbs. Okay, yesterday if you remember, we had just a reference mentioned here on the right side, on this side of the board. Okay, so today we are taking a deeper look into that to understand verbs from the finite and non-finite point of view, because these two are going to help us to identify the clause in a sentence or the clauses in the sentence. Okay, so which is the first non-finite that we got here? The first non-finite that we got here is this one, the verb which ends with ing. That's the first finite we got. And the second finite is the third form of the verb, that is past participle. So let me right now represent it as V3, the third form. And the last one, the to form of the verb, like which means like to watch, right? So that to, preposition to plus verb. When a preposition precedes the verb, or comes before the verb, that verb gets neutralized with its number and tense. It doesn't matter to us much for identifying the tense or the number of the subject, the tense of the sentence. So what are these called now? A verb that ends with ing is called a gerund. Okay, V3, we just had it here. It's called past participle. Okay, and the third one is infinitive. The third one is infinitive. Okay, now why these three verbs become necessary? If we minus, if I take this one, all verbs family minus these three non-finites, right? If I minus these three non-remaining verbs are all finites. Okay, just for our reference, what we can do, like the first and the second form of the verb are finites, V1 and V2. What are they? The V1 and V2 here refer to simple present and simple past. Okay, plus the modal verbs. Okay, even the modal verbs are also the modal verbs also become finite verbs. Okay, so let us just remember this, that we have a whole lot of verbs in the dictionary or in English language, and if we minus these three non-finites, the remaining all are finite verbs. So three non-finites, gerund, past participle and infinitive. We remove these verbs from the family of verbs. The remaining verbs are all the finite verbs. So this is a way to remember what the finite verbs are. Even in case we don't remember this, go by the character of the verb. If it can define the number of the subject and if it can define the tense of the sentence, then still it is a non-finite verb. Okay, so I guess this should be good enough for you to remember the finite and non-finite verbs, because we are studying the chapter in grammar which is called clauses, and verbs become very important to learn that chapter. So I'll get the title again. Those who have joined a little late can just take a look at the title. So this is what we need to remember about finite and non-finite verbs. So having done with this, let's move on to the next part, and that is about analyzing the sentence from the structural point of view. Okay, because that will tell us what are the sentences made of, what kind of clauses they are made of. Okay, so let's start with this. Like if I say beautiful campus, okay, you might wonder what these two words are doing here. Naturally, these two words will not make that sentence. It's only to tell you like how part by part we can construct this sentence. Okay, beautiful campus. I want to relate it to my school. So we can say our school has a beautiful campus. Okay, our school has a beautiful campus is the example that we have chosen right now. So let's look into the analysis. Okay, let's see the different part of the sentence now. Again, we need to remind ourselves that it should have a finite verb or a subject and predicate of its own, and it should be a part of a sentence. Okay, so let's go by that now. Let's first see what is the verb that we have got. Okay, the verb that we have got here is has. right? As told earlier, all perfect tenses will make a finite verb. So no doubt on that. So this becomes a finite verb, even if it is the only verb that we have got here. It is the finite verb. Okay, has also tells us that the subject that we have here is singular subject. Okay, and then the tense here, of course, has is always in present perfect. Okay, our school has. What has it got? A beautiful campus. Okay, this becomes the object, a beautiful campus. Now, if you look at it, the points to remember, if we go back to it, our first point was every finite verb makes a clause. So we have one finite verb which has a subject and predicate of its own, verb and object, right? So subject and predicate of its own. So this becomes a clause. Okay, and since it's only one clause, naturally we can say there is no dependency of any other part of that sentence on the other one. So this is completely one main clause, one independent clause. So this sentence. Okay, so let me take another example now. Okay, our school, I'll try going with the same example. Our school has a beautiful campus which is on the lakeside. It is on the lakeside lake. Okay, so now we have extended the sentence. How have we extended the sentence? We have extended the sentence where we tell the school's location. It's on the lakeside, on the bank of the lake. Okay. Now let's look at the verbs. Okay. What are the verbs? And we use the same one because it's easy to identify. Has, we have said that has is perfect tense, present perfect. Okay, and has. For example, if it is our schools, right? If it is our schools, then it would be our schools have, right? So that should tell us that this is also defining that the subject of the sentence is singular, our school. What does it got? As said in the earlier example, a beautiful campus. Okay, where is this campus located? It's located on the lake side. Okay, which is on the lake side. So the next verb that we have got is, right? And is as a helping verb is also a finite verb. Okay, and the other one you can simply guess that there's only one verb, so that's going to be a finite verb. Okay, is. Okay, what is it? It's on the lakeside. And what is on the lakeside? Campus. And who has a beautiful campus? Our school. So they get connected like this. Okay. So now we have two clauses here because one finite verb makes one clause and the other finite verb makes the other clause. Okay. If has is present perfect, is present tense. Okay. So now let's look at the example from the clause point of view now. So what is these clauses that we have got here now? Okay. One clause is our school has a beautiful campus. Note the punctuation here. It's a comma, which is on the lake side. So always remember that wherever we use connectors, linking words, conjunctions like this, usually we use it with a comma before that. Okay. So that's another way of trying to see where the clause completes. Okay. The comma tells indirectly that this clause completes here and the remaining part of a sentence could be another clause or a phrase depending upon the composition of the remaining part of the sentence, right? Okay, so let's go back. Our school is the subject and next the predicate. Subject and predicate of its own, definitely it's a clause here now. So this is one clause, a beautiful campus. And the next clause that we have is which is located on the lakeside. What is that which? This beautiful campus. Okay. This beautiful campus is located on the lakeside. So which here is trying to relate the subject. Okay. It is relating the subject to this part of the clause. So who do you think is dependent and independent now? Okay, our school has a beautiful campus. It's complete unto itself, right? Which is on the lakeside. Suddenly we see that there's something which is incomplete. We sense that there is something incomplete, which is on the lakeside. So to get the meaning of which, this clause has to depend upon the earlier part of the sentence or the earlier clause. Okay, so that is the reason why we can call this clause right from here, this one, we can call it as main clause because it is independent, right? It's independent clause. Now, which is that clause which is dependent to get its subject? It is this one, is on the lakeside. Okay, right? So this becomes the dependent clause. Dependent clause, we call it subordinate. Subordinate clause. A secondary role. It plays a secondary role, but it is important. Okay. Now, who is connecting these two clauses? It is this word which is connecting the two clauses. So this we call it conjunction, right? So if you remember what we said yesterday, like if there are two finite clauses, definitely there are two finite verbs, definitely there are two clauses. If there are two clauses, there must be a conjunction to join them. Okay. So the earlier example we saw that it has got one clause and that itself becomes a main clause. And in the second example, we have seen two clauses in a sentence which is connected by a conjunction which. Okay. So let's take another example now. The other example we'll try to see with another conjunction. Okay. So let's see what's that example can be. I'll try keeping with the same context. Our school has a beautiful campus. Okay, and it's located. Okay, to make it simpler for you, I'll make it, and it is located on the bank of the lake, or say on the lakeside. Okay, the school has a beautiful campus and it is located on the lakeside. So what is done here? The same meaning is being carried over in all the three sentences. But the difference is the conjunction that's used. Okay, the first sentence, naturally it had only one clause, so no conjunction was used there. Now we have the second sentence where there are two clauses, so obviously we have one conjunction. And similarly in this sentence also we have one conjunction because we have two finite verbs. And which are those two finite verbs now? The same thing as we analyzed it earlier in the other sentence. Has is the finite verb and is a finite verb. Okay, what is the subject for is? It. And what is the object to it? The location, right? Located on the lakeside. If I go to has, who has that? Our subject here is our school. And what does it have? Our beautiful campus. Object that completes it. Okay, now if you look at these two sentences, right, these two sentences, you will understand what is a complex sentence and what is a compound sentence. Okay, that we will come to it later. Let's come back to this sentence now. Now our school has a beautiful campus. It's equally poised with the other part of the sentence, the other clause. The other clause is it is located on the lakeside. Okay. Our school has a beautiful campus. It is located on the lakeside. Now, for example, if I don't use this conjunction and read it, it is located on the lakeside. It still makes a complete meaning, right? It is located on the lakeside. It makes that a complete composition of a subject, verb, and object, or rather say subject and predicate of its own. Now, if I come to this part of the sentence, our school has a beautiful campus, even that also has a subject and predicate of its own, right? But still, this beginning of the letter with a punctuation, a capital letter, and ending with a full stop tells that they still have to be together because they belong to the same sentence. Okay, if they belong to the same sentence, naturally, they must be joined to each other. So and is joining here, and this is where we find the difference between these two examples. Okay, so and what is and doing here? And is joining these two clauses and thus playing the role of the conjunction. Okay, so now if we look at these two clauses, who is dependent and who is independent? Okay, now this part of the clause from here till the campus, it still looks very independent. It has subject and predicate of its own, so no problem in calling it as main clause. Okay, now the next part, this is the other clause, the finite verb with is, right? The subject as it and the object as the location, located on the lakeside. Even this also looks very independent, and so this also can be called a main clause. Okay, so interesting to note here is this is also a main clause, right? And this is also a main clause. Okay, and we have a conjunction and joining the two clauses. So if you see here, the role of the conjunction, right? Now check with the role of the conjunction. Is trying to relate the subject for this part of the clause. What is the subject? That's a beautiful campus. And here, and doesn't relate anything, it just joins. Okay, it just joins these two clauses. So that is the role that is played by and here. It just joins the two clauses, whereas which relates the subject for that. So now the difference between these two conjunction is the function, the role that they play in that particular sentence. One relates and the other one joins it. Okay, so based on that role, we can distinguish the conjunctions. Okay, that we'll see later, but right now, let's take a overall view of the clauses that these two sentences consist of. Here we have two main clauses, and if you remember the definition that we had, two main clauses will make it a compound sentence with or without a subordinate clause. Okay, with or without a subordinate clause, the compulsory condition is there must be two main clauses or more. There can be another main clause or there can be another subordinate clause. For example, our school has a beautiful campus and it is located on the lake side, gives a beautiful view of the other side. Okay, so now I'm continuing it, which. Now, if which, why I've chosen which is because you have already seen here, so that should make it easy for you to understand that which relates, and so it's a subordinate clause. Okay, so two main clauses and subordinate if I continue with this sentence. But for now, what is visible for you here is these two are two independent clauses, two main clauses, and so this can be called a compound sentence. Now let's come to this one. Our school has a beautiful campus which is on the lakeside. For the subject, I need to depend upon the other one. So this becomes a dependent clause and this becomes an independent clause and the other part becomes a dependent clause. So the dependent clause is subordinate and the independent clause is a main clause. So a composition of a main clause with any number of subordinate clauses in it will make a complex sentence. So this is a compound sentence and this is a complex sentence. Okay, and the earlier example, which right now is not visible on the board, it was wiped out. If you go back to that example, you will see that it just has only one clause, main clause. So one main clause makes it a simple sentence. two main clauses with any number of subordinate clause will make it a compound sentence, and one main clause with any number of subordinate clauses will make it a complex sentence. Okay, so this you need to remember for now. We'll take a break and get back to you in the next 5 to 10 minutes. The class will continue after the break. Meanwhile, just have a little calisthenics, shake out yourself, shake up a little so that you will come back again very active to listen to this class. So next what we see is the conjunctions and how based on conjunctions also we can identify the clauses. Okay, so see you again after the break.